Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CMA and CMA webinar series. I'm Mike Wilkening, part of the content team here at ARC, and I will be your host for today's webinar, Decoding AI for CPGs, a path for category management success, hosted by our friends at Insight AI. We're really excited today that you're here for this discussion, as we have a panel of retail industry veterans and former category and sales leaders at Coca-Cola and Walmart to discuss AI adoption in the CPG world. Now, this is actionable, boots on the ground stuff, and you're going to leave with practical advice on a variety of key issues, including opportunities for AI integration in Catman and how to gain alignment and support internally for your AI projects, which we all know can be a difficult hurdle to overcome. Now, we're going to record today's session, so if you miss anything, don't fret. And this is also designed to be an interactive session. So we want your questions, we want your feedback throughout. We're going to have some time for Q&A at the end, so enter your questions in the question section at right in the chat. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists today from Insight AI. Capri Bixie is EVP of Strategy Consulting. She is a former leader at Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper Snapple, and Ahold Delhaize, who has extensive strategic leadership experience both in retail and supplier roles in the CPG industry. She was recognized as a senior level top woman in convenience in 2022, and has also received recognition for her leadership in collaborative joint business planning with top retailers across multiple channels and multiple formats. Christine Joji is also an EVP of Strategy Consulting at Insight, and she's a former VP of merchandising at Walmart who led strategic initiatives that resulted in substantial revenue growth for the company across grocery, and prior to that, personal care. She's widely recognized as a visionary leader who played a pivotal role in optimizing Walmart's merchandising with large CPGs. It's also my pleasure to welcome Marcia Shapiro, the SVP of Client Solutions at Insight. Now, she's an accomplished AI solutions expert with over 2 decades of experience leading the design, development, and implementation of value-driven business capabilities. She's a veteran of pricing, promotions, business planning, and supply chain optimization, who spearheaded numerous initiatives that delivered measurable results and lasting impact for global leaders like Walmart, Target, Tiffany, Nike, and the Home Depot, really a who's who of industry. With that, I'm really excited to kick off today's panel. And in the interactive spirit of today's call, we're going to start with a poll of how you use AI. And so what I will do here is launch the poll, and you'll see it pop up on your screen, and you'll have about 30 seconds to reply. So we'll get this started right now. All righty. So I think that was sort of a good start for today. And as we can see from a results standpoint, it looks like a slight majority uses AI for sort of the Catman assortment, actionable insights, and also pricing and RGM are 2 areas. And RGM is really an area where I think AI has really started to rise in sort of popularity and also sort of use in regards. But as we can see, there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for companies to start using it, is that a majority are not using it in any particular way right now, at least in the categories we have listed. So with that, let's go to Marcia first. And again, I'm really excited to talk to you first about this, given all your experience in sort of both the business and also with AI. So help us level set around AI in the sense that there's a ton of hype around it. There's a lot of buzzwords. But can you give us, some of the, distinctions between AI, machine learning, generative AI particularly, and how do these terms sort of differ in their scope and capabilities and their use?
Thanks, Mike. Before I get into the buzzwords, I think it's important to really understand the evolution of AI. Interestingly, the formal foundation and study of AI actually began in the 20th century. In 1950, Alan Turing, a pioneering computer scientist, introduced the Turing test as a way to evaluate the machine's ability to exhibit intelligent behavior, equivalent to that of a human. I have a fun fact for you. I first learned of Turing in the mid-2010s when a data science company I worked for had a conference room named after him. Over the following decades, all AI progressed through various phases, with early years focused on rule-based systems. A lot of you probably used some of these rule-based applications, if you will, and symbolic logic, sort of laying the groundwork for where we are today with expert and decision support tools. We then saw in the 80s and 90s the emergence of machine learning techniques, for those of us that were actually alive in the 80s and 90s. Neural networks, which is simply a subset of artificial intelligence, was developed and involves training algorithms on data to learn and improve without explicit programming. So that really started in the 80s and 90s in terms of sort of that next version of AI. The 21st century witnessed a resurgence of AI due to the amazing amounts of data, computational power, and advancements in deep learning algorithms. So deep learning, which is a subset of machine learning, inspired revolutionized fields such as computer vision, natural language processing, and speech recognition. So thanks to ChatGPT, this is what the general public thinks about when they think about AI. So while AI is an overarching field focused on creating intelligent systems, machine learning is a subset of AI involving the ability to train those algorithms to continuously improve based on the data that it's receiving. Generative AI, on the other hand, is a specialized area of machine learning and AI that focuses on generating new data based on patterns learned from the existing data. So as we all know, AI systems are beginning to outperform humans in specific tasks, leading to a ton of AI applications across industries such as healthcare, finance, transportation, entertainment, and obviously retail and CPG, which our poll told us a bit in terms of where the CPG world is. I'll close out this question by mentioning, if you want to observe the latest in AI, I really highly recommend you visit the New Sphere in Las Vegas, because as you can see firsthand, you'll see a couple robots there, and they are having amazing conversations with visitors, all using AI. So super fun, and I'll turn it back over to you, Mike.
Yeah, that the Sphere is something, and that is it's certainly an interesting way to use AI, and I think good discussion in terms of some of the even clarity around the way that some of the terms are used. I think was great to sort of give Marcia, in the sense that I think that there's a feeling sometimes when we get into talking about AI, at least I know I feel this way, that I'm either misusing terms or talking in a way that's using something incorrect. So I appreciate some of the distinctions there. And I wanted to pivot from there and sort of bring in Christine, because given all your experience with Walmart, you've obviously got great insight about what retailers want out of their CPG partners, right? And so I want to know, how is this evolving or changing in terms of the calculus there with the advent of all of the AI-driven technology that really has entered the marketplace?
Yeah, so retailers have the opportunity to work with multiple brands and companies that serve the dynamic needs of their customers. Each brand has a meaningful place in the composition of the category and the ability to make a purposeful impact. Now, the table stakes to begin a conversation start with having relevant insights and data on the customer, the industry, your brands, and the retailer. And in order to fully realize partnership potential, retailers rely on their suppliers to be at the top of their game and understand the customer better than anyone else. to know where they are now, what's impacting their lives from a macro and microeconomic standpoint, and how their needs are shifting. To know the industry inside and out, and if it's growing, if customers are coming in or leaving the category, and where the opportunity gaps are. And then to understand their retail partners and their strategic priorities. What are they trying to achieve? Is it price leadership, volume, market share, etc.? Now, each merchant or merchant leadership team can have hundreds of suppliers who call on them. The question is how do you set yourself apart and become an integral voice with a seat at the table? The first thing to do is to bring meaningful, unbiased data and insights to your retail partners. Don't just report the news. Most retailers already know how the business is performing and what's working and what's not working. What they're looking for is the why and the so what. And this is where AI technology solutions come into play. So AI can harmonize disparate sources of data that when streamed together create a single version of the truth that provide a more holistic view into the business. Quality AI tools don't just look backwards. They leverage that harmonized data from third parties and retailers, economics, etc., and then apply algorithms and accelerators forecasting predictive future outcomes. A true AI tool can also provide detailed decomposition and explainability into the why. What is driving these changes and outcomes? And then also will forecast and tell you what is going to happen if things do not change. And then finally, solutions should be actively modeling and creating dynamic responsiveness, allowing for intelligent alerting, which will tell you if you are or are not going to achieve your goals for the week, the month, and the quarter. And they can also generate actions that you can take on price, promotion, trade, etc., to meet the KPIs that you set. Retail is an incredibly fast-paced environment, and every year expectations continue to rise. And generally, what is not changing are the resources that people have to exceed those new expectations. Teams have to figure out how do we do it better, faster, and get it right the first time. And implementing AI solutions into your business lets you accomplish that.
A lot of food for thought there, Christine. And again, liked the sort of the beginning sort of thought around this discussion of what table stakes are and how that continues to sort of shift in terms of it's more and more, you know, what you've got to distinguish yourself, it seems like, as a CPG more and more to sort of make that impact and sort of break through with retailers, and AI seems like a way to do it. With that, there's a lot of reasons why folks don't, you know, maybe haven't started that journey yet or are sort of in the process of getting started in that regard. And to that end, let's go to our second poll today around the idea of if you haven't started your AI journey yet, what's keeping you from it? So the poll will be up here right now. All righty. It doesn't surprise me that the first number one reason appears to be that it's not clear where or how to start, because some of the feedback and some of the things we hear from members all the time, as I say to this panel, is that there are a lot of solutions in the marketplace. There's a lot being talked about with AI, and making heads or tails of it is difficult. And a lot of solutions look the same. And then it becomes, okay, then it starts trickling down to all the other sort of issues from there. Again, the CapEx experience of it, the skills gap, right? Obviously, we know that there's a certain amount of skill that's needed to be able to sort of harness these tools in a great way. So I think really kind of fascinating stuff, but not knowing where to start, my goodness, isn't that one of the hurdles? It's a hurdle of life in a lot of ways. So To that end, let's suppose someone starts going down that road or says, hey, I'm going to, we're going to start using tools in a way that makes sense for us and is leveraged to our business. So Capri, I want to go to you. Could you give an example or talk about how AI-driven analytics and data kind of help CPGs collaborate more effectively with retailers?
Absolutely. So actually, I'm going to back up a little bit because we're talking about we don't know how and when to start, right? So jumping to how do these analytics and data-driven insights help CPG organizations collaborate more effectively is one part of it. That would be sort of a KPI identification. So the first thing that you truly want to do is understand what are the controllables that you can control. And what do you want to do with AI? Do you want to automate or do you want to elevate? So AI is great for both of those things, but they often sit at different ends of the spectrum. So automation can do many things for us, and AI can help with that. We can report the news better, we can get better perspective, but then as you begin to elevate, you get the opportunity to predict and prescribe. So AI can do all of those things, but first you have to decide what you want to do with it. If it's collaborating more effectively with retailers, one of the things that you can do is, again, going back to control the controllables, know what your goals are. And it doesn't matter whether you were talking about applying this internally to internal processes. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about this to elevate with retailers. You have to know what you're trying to accomplish. So setting your KPIs and what your goals are is the number one thing that you can do as you identify, how do I want to start with AI? So there's internal stakeholder alignment. We see that, lack of business case. You think about how you get internal stakeholders aligned. Budget identification is another thing. These are all internal processes before you even begin the process of collaborating with the retailer on the results. So number one things being understand your KPIs. Set those very clearly. Secondly, once you identify the outputs, then you can say, how do I want to use this with my retailer? Do I want to give better perspective? Going back to what Christine said, that's the what. Then there's the so what, and now what? So what's next, and what do I do about it? So collaborating with your retailer is not just about reporting the news better. It's not just about knowing your performance, but you have to do that with your business. But it's also about the agility that Christine also mentioned. You must know your business and you must be agile. So you need to flex with what the retailer is asking you for, which frankly can change from day to day, from month to month. Their strategies can change, their needs from you change. And so your KPIs, your goals, your objectives, and your information have to be able to very rapidly adjust with it. So when you're thinking about an AI solution, think about what those KPIs are right now, how you might need to adjust them, and where you need to be agile. So I think that covers the gambit there, Mike, of how you get started. I know we're going to talk in a little while about sort of those next steps in terms of how do you get that project started internally with your stakeholders. So I want to stop there and not go too far into the internal and external, but internally, please think about setting those KPIs as the number one thing that you can do.
What was striking about what was said here is that it seems like so many of all of these sort of business case questions around tech start with the company that's thinking about moving in a particular direction tech-wise has to understand itself, who it is and what it wants to be and what it's trying to solve for first. And if you can't get there, it doesn't matter regardless. So good kind of fundamentals to start. But it's a good, I guess you can't say it enough. It's something that I think always sort of comes up. To that end, though, as we think about technology, and we know that particularly if you're looking at providers or any service you're looking for, there's a partnership end, and right, each partner has to understand each other and kind of understand the other's goals, if you will, right? And so, Marcia, I want to come to you and ask this question about there are solutions out there, and so how, if I'm looking, how do I effectively differentiate between like genuine capabilities and just sort of AI whitewashing, if you will, in terms of and how, if I'm looking, or if I'm starting to kind of go down that road at looking at a tool, how do I ensure like transparency and reliability in an option? And again, something that really kind of is tailored to what I need it to be, if you will.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. This is a really interesting question, and having worked with a lot of solution providers, both as part of a solution provider company, as well as on the other side buying solutions for technology areas. This is something that I've sort of evolved over my career in terms of the different changing questions you have to ask and request. So first, I'll start with, just as Capri mentioned, you've got to know the problem or the business case that you're trying to solve. And any strong solution provider is going to help you articulate that, number one, and then also ensure that you've got a measure of success, right? That you've identified, as Capri was talking about, the actual KPIs that you want to utilize in order to measure success around solving that particular business problem. Are you hoping to reduce manual effort? Are you focused on increasing revenue or improving customer satisfaction? All of these are valid KPIs. You really have to understand the use case, but most importantly, start with the business benefit that you're hoping to achieve. And as I mentioned, a true partner is going to help you articulate and recommend the best way to define that value. Next, I think you really want to ask for clear definitions of the AI techniques that are being used. We just talked about what the definition of those techniques are, but getting very granular in terms of the off-the-shelf algorithms that are available, where those are being applied, and understanding, because not every solution is going to be 100% AI, there's still going to be business rule requirements, et cetera, that may not utilize some of the, let's say, machine learning or deep learning, natural language processing algorithms. So really pinpoint and identify where that is happening. Many companies have created AI councils to ask the very detailed technical questions, but you can start by requesting an explanation of how AI is integrated into the solution and what tasks it's performing. Think of it in terms of inputs and outputs. What data is required? That's always a big question. I think one of our questions coming across is about, how do I make sure my data is ready? And we'll talk about that in a bit. But that's super important. What data is going to be required to get these awesome results that you're providing? And then what output should I expect? So as I start to look at those results, what are they telling me? The next thing I'm going to call out is opening up that black box. Make sure your solution provider has opened that black box. One of the biggest constraints in early AI adoption was that end users didn't trust the results. And I don't think that's changed a lot today. Today, we really now have the ability to open that black box very easily and answer the why. Again, using more techniques, more machine learning techniques that are powering that AI solution to provide the answer that we know those end users are asking. So with all of the optimization capabilities and answers that we're providing from an AI perspective, the question that the end user is having is, well, why should I believe this? So it's super important that your provider is answering those questions on a regular basis, where in the software, if you will, or the solution, is the system explaining the why that something is happening? Can I pull that why at any point in time? In life, we take very little for granted, so we should really be sure to expect answers to our questions throughout our journey, not just during the sales cycle. But make sure that these things are embedded within the application. Don't forget to also ask about processes for maintaining, updating, and improving models over time. What about other outputs of the AI solution? Are these explained in layman's terms? For example, if forecasting is a critical part of the solution, does the solution break down the forecast to explain the causes? So these are things that you should expect as you're talking to your solution provider. I have a couple more tidbits here. Another way that you want to trust your solution provider is to ask for case studies and reference calls. Understand where other companies have used these tools, which will also help you understand relative business cases, right? As you're starting to identify your KPIs, your really articulate that business problem that you're trying to solve, understand how others are using it and where they have received benefit. Oftentimes there might even be a user conference that you can join to really create that collaborative nature. Don't hesitate to also evaluate the solution provider's team. What I mean by that is understand their skill sets, where they came from, what their qualifications and experience is. As data scientists, as machine learning engineers, typically you'll be passed around during a sales cycle, if you will, to start to talk and have those conversations. And that's really important. Understand who you're talking to and understand what whether they really understand your industry. AI providers really hone in typically on specific industry expertise. I think that's super important because as we train and maintain and create and develop models, those models can be very specific to the industry. So it's really important that you're asking where those data scientists and machine learning engineers have come from and how much experience they have within the industry. And lastly, and Mike, hopefully I haven't gone on too long, lastly, is the provider you're evaluating willing to conduct a proof of concept project? I think that's a really easy way to create a quick test while also receiving some business value. This helps you understand a lot of things about your provider. What are their delivery practices, their method of communication with key stakeholders? Do they have the ability to pivot? And it really ends up giving you a flavor for what you will get with the larger rollout of your solution before you're hitting too many groups. I think all of this due diligence will help you really find the best partner. And I'll turn it back over to you, Mike.
Many good points, Marcia, and a lot of, I think a lot for CPGs and retailers to think about. The one thing I want to seize about it more than anything on what you said was, again, this idea of creating a model that eventually it has to evolve over time, meaning AI is not, an AI powered sort of model or tech, whatever you do, is not something that, you implement it. It doesn't have to change with time. It has to sort of evolve as your business changes, as sort of data changes and all of those things. So I thought that was really a really key point, that it's, again, think about it, right? You have the courage to get started, you find the money to do it, you find the right partner, you do all the things, right? Even if you do everything right, if it doesn't evolve, then you have something that was best in class that very quickly goes out of style, if you will. So that was really key. But we keep kind of going back to the start on this, and it's all right. Let's suppose many of us are still starting that journey, or kind of still figuring out where we want to go here, right? And so let's suppose I have the courage to start a journey. Let's say, hey, we're committed to AI as an org, and we've got the budget to put a tool in and all those things. And then we realize, my goodness, our data is a mess. And this is a discussion that's come up. It's something members have talked about. It's like, oh my goodness, we have to clean this up to get to a point where we can use it. And then furthermore, it's do we have the people to be able to implement this too? And so we want to do it. The spirit is willing, Capri, but do we have the right people? So talk about how this all how can a company that really wants to be brave and start this, how can they successfully integrate the technologies into the Catman process around data readiness, infrastructure, talent acquisition? How do they start to marry all these things to make sure it works?
Great question. And of course, I'm going to hark back to something I already said, which is know what you want to accomplish. So be clear about what your KPIs are. There is no way that you can interview solution providers, which you must do. You cannot interview them if you do not have a consistent line of questioning. You can't compare their answers if you didn't ask everyone the same thing. So understand what you want to accomplish, number one. Number two, interview providers and be consistent and ask questions. Some of the questions, we don't know what we don't know in terms of what we need to go ask. So let me help with a few of those things. Are you a data provider? Are you a data aggregator? And the questions here are going to be leading, meaning depending on how these are answered by the solution provider, you can begin to see what is it that they are really providing. Do you work with third-party data agreements? Where do you currently work with third-party data agreements? Because many solution providers can say, we work with all types of data. And absolutely that's true. But data security is a key buzzword right now in the industry everywhere. We want to make sure that our data is secure. There are a lot of controls around how data is used. And it is not easy to simply export data from your environment into something that someone has built. Maybe using AI may accomplish a goal that is within your set of considerations, but that doesn't mean that you can get them the data because you can't export that data from your environment. So you really want to be asking these questions of your provider so that you know this is going to accomplish the true goal that I have. And if the goal is I want to harmonize lots of data sources, then you must be able to show me that you can work with other data sources, not just ones that are readily available externally. You need to be able to work with, if I want to optimize something based on profitability, if I want to shift my mix, I have to have data that is internal that you really cannot share externally. So that's one thing, work with the data. Next is, how do you build this? Do you build this to break it later? What happens after we finish this project? So if I want to evolve this project in the future, and Mike, you alluded to this at the end as you were introducing this question, what happens afterward? Are you now left with something best in class that's now obsolete after a couple of years because technology is so rapidly advancing? So as you think about the solution provider that you are selecting, think about how they build it and ask them questions to say, what happens after this is implemented? Can we evolve it? Can you connect it to my internal systems? Can it talk with other systems? If it doesn't right now, can it later? So if we build a feature into it now, can we expand that feature later? Anybody that's ever worked with a retailer or for a retailer knows that the old DOS systems that had been continually patched on, and we were just all waiting for them to break, right? Because it was a system and then you patched onto it. That is not the world in which we live anymore. What we want to do is build things to consistently break them so that they are evolving with us and not becoming obsolete, and therefore you have to start over completely. What we want to do is just continue to evolve our understanding and use of all of these technologies. So with regard to that and the discovery on what data they use, bring in your IT stakeholders early, because they will be able to vet some of the answers to these questions with you in collaboration. You know the user journey. You've defined the KPI, and you need to know what the output is that you're looking for. In other words, be able to answer, what do I want to be able to do afterward? So is the answer perspective? I want to just know where my business is. I simply want to be able to report the news easier and faster. You're asking an automation question. Do I want to predict where something is going? Okay, that is more, I'm really getting into AI enablement, and I'm talking about forecasting. Does it connect to my other systems? I'm talking about where consumers are going to go, or how they're going to behave, or how macroeconomic variables are going to impact where I allocate resources? How can I help the executive leadership team allocate resources better, set annual targets better? All of those are great questions, but you need to bucket which ones you want to answer. But that would fall into, predictive. That is where you begin to elevate versus automate. So you need to know, do I want to give perspective? Do I want to predict? Or do I want to prescribe? You can do all of those and along that spectrum, and you can create a crawl, walk, run with your solution provider. So ask them those questions. How does this help give me perspective? How does this help predict for me? And how does this help prescribe for me? And can I stage it in a point where I start where I know I can handle it, and then we move to this, and then we move to the next part? And what parts of this are automating, and what parts of this are elevating my strategic thought leadership? Because ultimately, that's what we're all looking for. The way to get to strategic thought leadership faster. We have so much data right now, and we don't know what to do with it. This is the I don't know where to start, because I have so many data sets, and I'm running so fast, trying to get through all of that data every week to try to get to answers. That's an automation question to some degree. Then you can layer on predictive and prescriptive. So my point here is simply to ask lots of questions, but use that language. Understand what it is that you're truly getting and what you truly want. So that's all, a before question. But there's also, is this an answer stream or is this a tool? Because a lot of solution providers may not make that clear. And if you're not clear on what you want, it makes the answers more muddy. So as you're interviewing solution providers, know whether you simply want an answer now that tells you something that's happening in the future or what I need to go do or gives you a better perspective. Do I want a tool that I can go use? Because that's going to change. It's going to change your KPIs. It's going to change what you receive. It's going to change what you want, what you will be able to do afterward. And that's really the question, right? What do you want to be able to do after this is complete? So if this is an answer stream, does the solution provider go away afterward, or is there something next step? Do I get a support resource? Do I get somebody, a consultant, if you will, to help me along this journey? Is that part of what you provide? Or are you simply going to hand me something and go away? Do you help train me if it's a tool? How do you train my organization if I've asked for a tool? Because if you don't have adoption, you may have identified the budget, you may have identified key stakeholders, and you may have very successfully implemented the most beautiful tool that has ever been implemented. But if you cannot get adoption, what's the point? You will never accomplish those KPIs that you set out to accomplish. So that's all before. Now, as you talk about after, okay, I've identified the budget, I've identified my solution provider, I know what I want to get out of it. And now, I've brought in my IT stakeholders and they've told me this is where the data is going to sit in our environment. This is these are the questions that we have, and here's how we can help you answer these questions for the solution. But you've gotten through all of that. The next part is to keep all of your internal stakeholders aligned. Some of us, for a living, do post-event analysis as a muscle that we exercise every single time we have a promotion or we go and execute a plan. We look at it afterward, or we should be, and some of us are better at it than others. We should be looking at, how did that do? Was it effective? Did I get a return? But sometimes we're running so fast at what's coming that we end up not taking the time to say, how did it do? By keeping your internal stakeholders aligned, brand your project. Say, this is the project. Call it, give it a name, give it a quirky name. Let us help you do it. Ask your solution provider, how do you help me brand this internally? Keep my internal stakeholders aligned and updated. Do you send out a newsletter? Do you help us talk to our internal stakeholders? Will you come in and talk to our stakeholders with us? So those are all very good support questions, but the implementation of any project, data readiness, IT alignment, all of that aside, you still have many internal stakeholders that you need to bring along the journey with you. And some of those things, if a solution provider understands the value of keeping those internal stakeholders aligned, then they can help you do that. So be sure that you have a partner in the process and not just a provider. It's probably good advice for whether it's AI enabled or not, but particularly when you're dealing with AI, and many of us aren't sure what am I going to get for this? You need to have a partner that you trust on that journey that will keep everyone aligned.
Thought these were great points. I particularly liked the idea of the messaging around making sure that you're partnering with IT on, because it seems to me, from what I understand about technology implementations in this space, they're essential to the build versus buy question, meaning, they may say, look, we can't build something for a couple of years because we have other projects ahead in the queue. We don't have the capabilities to do it. But no matter where you go, having them alongside in sort of that passenger seat chair to kind of help guide and also shepherd a project along is really great. Again, like you said, this idea of making sure your organization is in line with it too, because if you don't have buy-in from the start on any particular tool, it will flounder. And so those seem to be two real kind of things that are just fundamental things that are good, I think, to particularly highlight, but particularly this first one around IT. IT, the sense I get, can be your best friend in these situations. And it seems like there's a real opportunity for practitioners in our industry to partner with them in ways that can really elevate their functions and sort of also elevate their businesses in a way that, if we all work together, it could be a great thing. There's a couple things I wanted to get to. We're down to our last few minutes here. And there was a question from the audience that I wanted to kind of get to. And it was around the idea of companies that work with a lot of data, from retailers and CPGs, like brokers, for instance. And if they don't have access to internal data, building a database or finding ways for AI to sort of leverage some things there to sort of still build an actionable tool, even without that internal data from partners. Any advice or best practices or thoughts about how those type of potential users can get started or sort of start going down that road?
Yeah, I'll jump in here, Mike. First of all, you really have to start with an understanding of what data is needed to power the models. And you'd be surprised at some of those requirements in terms of folks think that I need data from so many different sources in order to run these models. And the reality is it starts to become very repetitive. And so a lot of that data isn't actually necessary. But at the same time, you do want to ensure the quality around the data that you do have. So one of the pieces of this question is that they may not have a lot of the retailer detailed data. Syndicated data is a great way to start, and that typically will provide most of what is needed, if not all, depending again on the business case that you're trying to achieve. So by starting with that syndicated data, the next step is really to understand, and Capri touched on this quite a bit in what she talked about, is really making sure that you're harmonizing that data to ensure there's quality, consistency, and that all of the data is populated. So if there's, let's say, missing data that exists or unmatched data, typically difficult to match up different data streams, it's important that whether it's happening internally within your IT group or whether you're using a solution provider to do the harmonization, that there are specific techniques, and this is another place that AI can come into play, that you're utilizing AI to really improve that quality, understand what's missing, populate based on that AI, those AI algorithms, and have alerting and validation processes built in as well. Capri or Christine, anything you want to add there?
I'll just add very quickly that yes, and I notice in your question that you specifically mention brokers in this question. And so I'll just add that this is another great place to ask a solution provider a question. So as you're talking about those different pieces of data, even syndicated data requires a third-party data agreement. And there's different types of client licenses. So you could have a client that purchases syndicated data at a channel level, at a retailer level, but not at a store level. But then the broker can provide some store level data, for example. So as you think about the different pieces of data that you are using, where that data gets pulled into, that goes back to that environment question. So if that data is being used by the broker with their partner's license, and they also have licenses to use that data, as long as that data is being harmonized within the same environment, it should be able to be used together. So that's just it elicits another good set of questions for you to ask your solution provider. How do you work with brokers? Because it is a little different than working with a CPG organization, especially in creating those databases and the different sets of licenses that you have to work with. So how do you work with third-party data there? And how do you work within environments? And how do you work with brokers within those requirements? So that just creates another set of questions that you really should be vetting solution providers with, because that's a great question.
Thanks for sort of tackling that on the fly, and again, a lot of food for thought, and certainly, for the person that asked it, we certainly can connect you afterwards, the experts here, more if there's more questions, because there's certainly a unique question, I think, in terms of how to, sort of the challenges it may present. We've got a minute or so left, and I want to wrap. I want to go to Christine to finish, because you will have the last word today. And I wanted to kind of ask, again, this idea of, okay, now I've decided that I want to do AI, and but my my potential client has a lot of different needs, there are a lot of things that I can try to use AI to optimize for, but I don't know where to start in terms of whether it's assortment optimization or demand forecasting or just overall shopping experience. So my question to you is, if someone said, where can I best use AI, if we're talking about on the retailer end of things, or really sort of becoming that valued partner and really sort of kicking that relationship up to another level where I'm a true valued partner that's delivering something that maybe that they're not getting from somebody else that might be a competitor, how do I get there with AI?
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of refer that back to like the things that we opened with is, first, you have to know what you are trying to achieve, because that the answer of like, where should I look? Is it assortment? Is it pricing? It's going to differ from supplier to supplier and retailer to retailer. So, it goes back into understanding who is the customer, who are your retailers, and then what are you trying to achieve? And I would start with that. I can tell you that as a DMM for a multi-billion-dollar business, one of the biggest challenges that I faced every week was similar to what Capri said, and it was around the immense amount of data that was available to me. So every Sunday night and Monday morning, I would open my P&L and see how the business KPIs were. I generate reports in DSS and Luminate, get into a pricing system to see what the price gap was, look at my share data, review traffic, see what all the ads were from the previous week. Then I look at historical data and historical current weather, and I'd evaluate e-commerce performance. So that alone was 7 different tools that I had to individually review just to get perspective into what happened in my business. And it was a very, very time-consuming activity. After that, I still had to go generate hypothesis into why this happened and work with cross-functional teams to prove that out. And then I'd have to develop tactics to close any gaps that existed or to drive additional growth. And each of these tactics were best guess based on hypotheses that had to be implemented to be proven out. So retailers are looking to their supplier partners and their category advisory teams to bring fact-based ideas on how they can mutually drive the business. So AI solutions using forecast and reduce the time cycle from insights to action. And with 90+% accuracy, they really remove the questions of, is this hypothesis correct? And to deliver the results I said they will. Now, keeping in mind as techniques and solutions are created equal, but here are a couple of ways that this can AI can integrate into your daily life. Business planning suites built with forecast and alerting tools give you daily heads up on the short and long range outlooks with continuous tracking of actuals over time. So these suites can have intelligent alerting based on your business goals that will update daily, letting you know if you're going to meet your plan, and if you're not, where and why. They can also generate actionable insights, letting you know how to close the gap. So here's an example. 45% of twin pack deodorant users have switched into buying singles. A retail price gap of 18% can move those customers back into the twin. Without AI, you would have to see that the twin packs were down. You would go review your share data and see if people are leaving your brand, run reports in Luminate to see how the other brands in the category as a whole performed. Then you'd have to go back and analyze the actions taken over the last 2 years on price and promotion and track what impact they had to the business. And then if you found out that retail was the main driver of the volume loss, you'd have to pick a retail you felt was below a price threshold that would move and shift the buying behavior, and then convince your merchant that it would move the needle if they implemented it. Then you'd still have to wait a month to see if that retail you selected was correct, and if it wasn't, start the process all over again. So leveraging those AI tools gives you that certainty of like, this is why it happened, and these are actions that I take that will move that needle because I want to go drive volume. For assortment, tools with AI platforms generate macro and micro space optimization with an output of store item level recommendations with forecasted performance, explainability, and item level demand transference. Now, every modular review ever done has an output of new assortment and updated financials. The difference is when it's done with AI, there is detailed explainability on where the volume is coming from, where it's going, acquisition of new customers. It can be optimized based off of the business objectives you were trying to achieve for this modular, and it predicts how changes made interact with the retailer, market, and competitive portfolio. So if you're using holistic data sources, so the harmonized data, the new assortment accounts for shifts in customer preference, missing brands and items, changes to customer buying power, and regional buying patterns. And because it's not just a historic view or rear-looking view, it actually has forecasting capabilities. Those new item forecasts can be shared with your sales planning team, your procurement group, production, replenishment, marketing, and revenue growth management to improve their accuracy and their productivity. And then for pricing, over the last 3 years, customer spending habits have been dynamic. And every day there seems to be something new on the horizon that impacts how people spend. So shifts between national brand and private brand, high-end versus mid-tier, as well as overall participation in a category can shift in a matter of months. So price elasticity and cross-elasticity models incorporate customer loyalty, shopping patterns, demand transference, and can really help brands determine what retail a product or product group should be at to achieve their goals. And this also provides meaningful insights to an RGM team on how to manage their trade spend to really maximize results. So those are just a couple of ways, again, without specifics of what somebody is trying to achieve, that you could, incorporate AI into your business for better, faster, smarter results.
All righty, I think that's a wonderful place to close today's discussion. And we'll be following up today's call with a note to attendees with a survey. We also have, there was a slide that we were going to flash up at the end here that I'm having a bit of a tech issue on my end, so apologies, that we'll send out to attendees in terms of being able to get in touch with Christine, Marcia, and Capri and the experts at Insight AI. A lot of experience on this panel, a lot of really, again, sort of actionable, very recent sort of, things that people can implement right away as they start to make their kind of steps on the journey with AI. And I think everyone's in different places. You know, it's not something where everyone's sort of starting from the same place. Some are further along. Some may think they're further along and they're actually not. Some maybe think they're not far along, but they really are doing things that are really, you know, there's some modesty that's in there. They're really doing things that are great, and it's perfect for them. So it kind of runs the gamut. So I thought that this was nice, and the engagement we got throughout here kind of shows that this is something that's top of mind for our members. So Capri, Marcia, Christine, Tevye, everyone over at Insight AI, thank you for putting this on today. I thought this was great. And again, we'll be back to members with more information on today's call, as well as where the recording will be in our resource library, as well as other follow-ups here. So thanks again to our esteemed panelists today. They did a great job, and we'll be back next week for another webinar in our CMA SEMA webinar series. Everyone have a great remainder of your day and rest of the week. And again, thanks so much for joining us today on this really, really important topic that, again, we're only just beginning, but it's good to get a little more sunshine on some of the things that are really starting to happen here. So thanks, guys, and have a great day.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.